This is CBC Winnipeg News.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. It's great to be back with you tonight. We still do not have a definitive cause of death for two people found dead in a tent over the weekend. Their bodies were discovered yesterday afternoon. As CBC's Cameron McLean reports, advocates fear those won't be the last deaths we see among the homeless this winter.
Paramedics were called to this tent in Joe Zukin Park for a report of two people in cardiac arrest. When they got there, the two people were already dead. Silo Mission Executive Director Tessa Blakey-Whitecloud says it's a sad situation.
It's totally devastating to have lost life this winter already. We know that it happens every year, and we need to do better as preparing as a city to make sure that it stops happening. But how we actually do that is by building the deeply affordable housing that these people need to live in with wraparound supports.
We spoke to some area residents who didn't want to go on camera, but one man we spoke to said he walks through this park every day, and he's seen this tent here for about a month. Area residents we've spoken to say that this is an ongoing issue, which they feel is not getting enough attention from the city and homeless outreach agencies.
It's a real piecemeal approach. Like some organizations handle St. Boniface and some organizations handle downtown. And it looks to me from where I sit that nobody handles Point Douglas.
News of the two deaths hit hard for Provincial Housing Minister Bernadette Smith, who represents the area.
It was tough this morning to see that people have lost their life to this. Something that you don't want to see.
The province recently boosted funding to emergency shelters to expand their operating hours. And after fire paramedics raised concerns about safety in homeless camps, the city delegated responsibility for checking on them to multiple people, which had previously been done by one person. St. Boniface Streetlinks founder Marion Willis says winter so far has been mild and will soon get worse.
January is weeks away, and the winter will rear, its ugly head soon, and people will struggle to survive.
The Office of the Medical Examiner is investigating the deaths in Joe Zukin Park, but they say the cause of death will not be released publicly. Cameron McLean, CBC News, Winnipeg.
RCMP say a man who crossed the international border on foot over the weekend suffered serious injuries related to the cold. RCMP found 4 men who'd crossed the border illegally just after 7 Saturday morning. They found them in 2 separate buildings in Emerson. The 3 other men were not hurt. RCMP say the men are from the country of Chad in North Central Africa. Officers patrolled the area looking for any others who might be crossing into Canada, but no one else was found. Police warn winter weather can quickly turn deadly. They say people should only cross the border at ports of entry. More people are hiring their own home care workers amid staffing shortages in one Manitoba health region. Care is typically provided by regional health authorities, but clients and their families can also choose to find home care help themselves. As CBC's Josh Crabb reports, one family made the change when they felt they could no longer rely on traditional home care visits.
Dashing through the snow in the one-horse open sleigh.
88-year-old Joan Neufeld gets into the Christmas spirit with one of her home care workers. Joanne Brown says the relationship they have with her mom is an improvement over past care. She used to get home care from the Interlake Eastern Regional Health Authority.
It was very frustrating. I believe they're very short-staffed. There'd be lots of times where they were canceling.
Brown moved her mom and dad, who died last month, from Winnipeg to Selkirk 2 years ago. She coordinates care under Manitoba's self and family managed care program. The province provides funding, but she's responsible for hiring and scheduling workers.
We felt it was worth it. They had consistency of care, which was huge, especially with my mom's dementia.
Home care helps keep people out of hospital and in their own homes longer, but the vacancy rate for healthcare aides who provide the majority of care is 17% in the Interlake Eastern Health Region. That also has public providers looking to private agencies for help here in Selkirk, one of 13 home care offices in the region. Presently, only the Selkirk office has contracted agency home care attendants due to staffing vacancies, the health region says. Agency staff are contracted when we need to maintain service delivery. MGEU President Kyle Ross says home care workers are frustrated with the amount of time they get with clients.
There needs to be more of them, there needs to be investment to recruit more of them so they can provide those services for Manitobans.
Self and family managed care has been around in Manitoba since 1991. It's expanded over the years with 1,500 clients registered as of October. University of Manitoba Associate Professor Christine Kelly says it's not for everyone, but she says there may be lessons for the public system.
Part of why it's so transformative. You have control over who is coming into your house to help you with very intimate things.
Brown wants the government to make sure staff aren't overworked.
I guess if I was Wab Canoe and I was going to change the system, I think that what I would look at is trying to look at what they are assigning realistically.
She's happy with her mom's care, and it will continue until her mom makes the move to a personal care home. Josh Crabb, CBC News, Selkirk.
Well, True North and the Southern Chiefs organization have made it official. They will be working together on the redevelopment of Portage Place and the former Bay building in Winnipeg's downtown. CBC's Bartley Kivas reports.
Number one. An exchange of gifts between executives at True North Real Estate and the Southern Chiefs organization, now partners in what they hope will be a seamless redevelopment of Portage Place and the former Bay building. With billionaire True North partner David Thompson looking on, not to mention the hopes of anyone concerned with the decline of downtown Winnipeg, True North and the SCO signed a memorandum of understanding to work together. One contractor, PCL, will now oversee both projects, which have a new combined price tag of $850 million, almost $200 million for the Bay and $650 million for Portage Place.
The plan for this redevelopment of Portage Place is huge. It starts with the demolition of this space, this glass atrium here at Edmonton Street. It also calls for a 15-story healthcare tower to rise above this east pad of the mall, and a 16-story residential tower to rise above here on the west side of what's now the mall.
True North Real Estate President Jim Ludlow says at least half the residential units will be affordable or accessible.
Over the past 7 months, we have developed a clearer understanding of our purpose at Portage Place. We now see it as a social redevelopment plan first, a real estate development second.
Conversely, Southern Chiefs Grand Chief Jerry Daniels sees the transformation of the former Bay building into a mixed-use project called Waiwene Bagakinagon as an economic opportunity.
We can only deliver quality social services, including access to affordable housing, quality health care, reconciliation, and safe communities if and only if our economy is strong.
There are still details to work out. Financing remains an issue for Waiwene, as are commitments for Portage Place from every level of government. And True North still has to pull the trigger on its purchase of the mall from the Forks North Portage Partnership and its Vancouver owners. One of those owners, Avatar Baines of Premise Properties, is happy to see Portage Place move on.
We're thrilled. We had our eyes open when we bought this asset. We thought downtown Winnipeg was on its way up. Talk about a bad call.
True North and the Southern Chiefs say they can change downtown Winnipeg's trajectory as long as they work together toward a common goal. Bartley Kivas, CBC News, Winnipeg.
The director of Canada's spy agency, CSIS, was in Winnipeg yesterday to talk about the human cost of foreign interference. David Vigneault told a crowd of people at the Canadian Museum for Human Rights. Some of Canada's adversaries have no limits on what they will try to do to infiltrate Canadian society and repress critics.
The leading actor conducting these activities is the People's Republic of China, or PRC. No one should be under any illusion about the breadth of the PRC's efforts to infiltrate our political systems, our private sector, government institutions, universities, and communities from coast to coast to coast.
Vigneault says foreign interference takes a toll on Canadians by eroding their ability to express their opinions and even by putting their lives in danger. A new rapid access to addictions medicine clinic, a RAM clinic, has opened in Winnipeg. It's located at the Aboriginal Health and Wellness Centre on Higgins Avenue. The CBC's Alana Cole takes us inside this first Indigenous-led RAM clinic.
This is where the care starts. They are never alone. They always have our social Indigenous planner or a greeter with them.
You can smudge with sage and cedar within steps of the entrance. There are harm reduction kits, upstairs, clinic rooms with a table and chairs, not a typical computer and desk. It's all part of the new Rapid Access to Addictions Medicine Clinic, known as a RAM Clinic, at the Aboriginal Health and Wellness Centre. Crystal Sear is the site coordinator.
We feed them, we nourish them, we give them tea and water, and we smudge with them, and we play the music that will comfort them. We just make their experience one of healing, softness.
Today was the official launch. The Indigenous-led clinic opened at the end of August. Housing, Addictions and Homelessness Minister Bernadette Smith says the province will spend up to $1 million a year to operate it.
Our government is excited to collaborate with the centre and uplift the work that they are doing and leading here in our community.
This is one of 3 RAM clinics in Winnipeg. There's drop-in hours for people looking for addictions care twice a week here. Clinic staff say they can support about 16 clients a week and have supported about 100 since it opened. Monica Sear says it's a start.
Then we're looking at probably just over 400 people per a 12-month cycle. And so based on that, we know that the numbers currently are much higher. So does the supply meet the demand? No, it doesn't.
That's why she wants to see it expand. That includes plans to reach people off-site with a mobile team in the spring. Alana Cole, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Manitoba could soon have more casinos, VLTs, and liquor stores. The mandate letter given to the new board of Manitoba Liquor and Lotteries shows the NDP government wants to end a suspension on gambling expansion. The previous government put that in place roughly 5 years ago. At the time, former PC Premier Brian Pallister said Manitoba had enough casinos. The Liquor and Lotteries Board has also been tasked with opening more liquor stores. The federal government is proposing a new law to create minimum water standards for First Nations. Currently, there aren't any regulations for drinking water or wastewater on reserves. As Olivia Stefanovich reports, there are big expectations for what this bill could change.
Even when he visits the nation's capital, Chief Chris Muniz of Niskandiga First Nation chooses to drink bottled water instead of trusting the tap.
Well, it's a trauma. It's what it's ingrained in our minds.
Niskandiga is a fly-in community in northwestern Ontario, with the longest drinking water advisory of any First Nation. 28 years and counting.
I just hope that someday that we'll be able to have clean drinking water.
Muniz also hopes Ottawa's new bill will prevent other First Nations from going through what his people are.
Hopefully that, once there's a boil of water advisory, it will get addressed right away, as opposed to waiting 28 years.
Introduction of government bills.
Bill C-61 aims to protect water in First Nations by creating minimum national standards for wastewater and drinking water.
Indigenous people, Indigenous children deserve to be conceived, born, and die drinking clean water.
The proposed legislation also promises to bring First Nations water systems up to par with municipal ones.
It commits to the equity of First Nations to have sufficient funding compared to non-Indigenous communities, and the funding frameworks will be worked out with First Nations people.
Ottawa is required to introduce the bill under a multi-billion-dollar settlement providing compensation for First Nations people deprived of safe potable water.
We've needed this kind of legislation for a long time.
But the NDP's Indigenous critic isn't throwing her support behind the bill just yet.
I need to see that First Nations do feel that they've been heard. I need to see that this legislation went beyond the court case.
The proposed law replaces legislation introduced by the previous Conservative government, repealed by the Liberals after widespread criticism from First Nations over a lack of consultation and funding. Issues this new bill will also be scrutinized for as it makes its way through the House of Commons. Olivia Stefanovic, CBC News, Ottawa.
Time to check in with this guy, meteorologist John Sauter. How are you?
Good.
Good.
How are you?
Well, nice to
Staying
sit here
warm.
with you.
Bit of a chilly day today.
It was chilly, but that's not going to last long.
Chilly but seasonal, right? Like it's kind
Yeah.
of where we should be. And you're right, it isn't going to last long. There's some very warm air just to the west of us. You want to see it?
Yeah,
Okay.
I do.
I'll show you too. There you go. This is from 3 o'clock this afternoon. -9 in Winnipeg, -17 in Thompson. But check out Regina, 11 degrees warmer than Winnipeg. Even in western portions of our province, it was a lot warmer. This is the upper ridge. See how the jet stream, these fast-moving arrows just kind of ridge up to the north? That allows warm air to come up into that territory from the south. Now, that whole pattern is going to make a little bit of a gentle shift over into the eastern prairies as we get through the day Wednesday and on into Thursday. So yes, milder air is on the way. Now this batch of milder air is still with us on Thursday and then kind of slumps to the south, and the next upper ridge will start to move our way toward the weekend. So milder air once again in Alberta, southern Saskatchewan, southern Manitoba. It won't be above zero on the weekend, but certainly milder than seasonal. Right now we are still at -9, south winds at 22, and the pressure pretty high. It's at 102.7 kilopascals and falling off. And just like last night, we've got a few flurries just south of Winnipeg, out to the west of us as well. So this is a little bit of a, I don't even want to call it a snow squall, but a few flakes in front of the headlights. Nothing here that you need to shovel too much, I don't think, but the wind's also not strong enough to really blow any of that around, so we'll see that pass through in the evening and end up with a clear sky overnight and a couple of really sunny days on the way across southern Manitoba, northwestern Ontario for Wednesday and Thursday. Now, this is Wednesday, 8 a.m. We've got a little band of snow trucking across the north. Out to the east by later in the day, we're still in a mainly sunny sky here in the south, and then clear skies again into Thursday. Thursday, an almost clear province. Even across northern Manitoba, there's the afternoon with a little band of cloud through Thompson, north of Norway House, but lots of sunshine here in the south, and that's the day when we get above zero, more like 3 to maybe even 5 degrees out toward the west, areas like Brandon and Verdun. -12, though, tonight under clear skies, and we're going to look at a -11 in the morning, but light winds. Good morning to get out for a walk, and then it's -1 in the afternoon, a south wind at 20, so winds are very similar to what we saw today, just the temperature isn't quite as cold. There's the 3 on Thursday. Overnight freezing rain, I think this is a very small chance on Friday into Saturday. Friday, we're still above zero, and then we drop to -8 by Saturday morning and -1 on Saturday afternoon. You'll see in the 7-day forecast that we've got temperatures staying above seasonal into next week.
Thanks, John. Looking forward to seeing that. Final negotiations went into the night at the COP28 climate conference in Dubai. We'll have the latest for you coming up. You're watching CBC Winnipeg News. Tensions have been running high as the COP28 climate conference winds down in Dubai. Negotiators have been hammering out the text for a final communique. They're trying to bridge a major gap between oil producers and others who want language calling for the phasing out of fossil fuels. CBC's Susan Ormiston has the latest.
It has been a long day of negotiations to arrive at a new draft text of this agreement at COP28.
What do we want? Phase out! If we don't get it, shut it down!
Meanwhile, we saw a large protest of NGOs and climate activists trying to pressure the negotiators to come to grips with this idea of fossil fuels and try to strengthen the language in that text. We also spoke to two young women who'd been in that protest. One of them, a 26-year-old from Colombia, told us about her first experience at a COP.
This whole thing is just us shouting to each other and not getting real action happening, so we can build off of that and create real solutions.
Canada's Climate Minister Stephen Guilbeault is leaving this evening to go back to Canada, but he has met with the presidency, as have the leads of all the delegations this evening. He is expecting we'll see a draft text sometime tonight or in the early hours of the morning, and that it may be the last one before a vote sometime likely on Wednesday. Minister Guilbeault was asked about the fossil fuel issue, whether that issue had been addressed, whether the controversy, disappointment, and criticism of last evening had any effect. He said it had. He hadn't seen the text, but the countries which were pushing back against any mention of fossil fuels, he said, were listening. Have a listen.
I think they listened. And the message they heard loud and clear last night from more than 70 different interventions is that what the text that was presented to us did not go far enough when it comes to sending the world a signal that we need to reduce our dependencies on fossil fuels. And there's all sorts of ways you can phrase it and you can frame it. The text didn't go far enough when it comes to finance to help the global south fight climate change.
The process from now is that new text will be examined, looked at, pored over by the delegations, and if it is accepted or minor changes, it will go to a plenary meeting, a meeting of all the delegations here to be voted on sometime likely within the next 12 to 18 hours. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Dubai.
The United Nations General Assembly has voted overwhelmingly to demand a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. Canada was among the 153 nations who voted in favor. Canada, Australia, and New Zealand also issued a joint statement today calling for, quote, a sustainable ceasefire. They also called for Hamas to release Israeli hostages immediately and to lay down arms. Meanwhile, the fighting continues in Gaza. The Israeli military released video that reportedly shows their ground forces inside Gaza. That fighting is now deep into southern Gaza. Israel's urged hundreds of thousands of civilians in the area to flee. Its defense minister says the offensive against Hamas could last months. The health ministry in Gaza, which is run by Hamas, says more than 18,400 Palestinians have been killed since the war started. There is new pressure on Israel to allow more aid in to desperate civilians. A coalition of leading Canadian rights groups and families of hostages are renewing calls for Ottawa to expand sanctions against Hamas and the group's main sponsor, Iran. They also want the federal government to launch an international state coalition to advocate for the return of all hostages.
The hostages are a standing reminder and a continuing reminder of the inhumanity of that day and of the continuing crime against humanity. For us at the Raoul Wallenberg Center and the Human Rights Coalition that have joined us, the immediate and unconditional release of all the hostages has been a stand-alone obligation since October 7th, and so remains.
Police in Ontario have laid more than a dozen additional and more serious charges in connection with the international sale of a poisonous substance. Kenneth Law of Mississauga, Ontario, is already in custody on several counts related to websites that sold a deadly chemical to people who later died by suicide. CBC's Katie Nicholson has the details.
A significant update on a sprawling case.
Today I can share that police have laid an additional 14 charges of second-degree murder in relation to this case.
These latest charges against alleged poison seller Kenneth Law, on top of the charges he already faces in Ontario for counseling or aiding suicide in connection with the deaths of 14 people between the ages of 16 and 36, including 19-year-old Ashton Prosser from Windsor and 21-year-old Stephen Mitchell Jr. of Toronto. Law ran several websites which shipped products which could be used for self-harm, including sodium nitrite. These new second-degree murder charges require a higher burden of proof.
One difference with second-degree murder is that it's a deliberate act, and you either have to prove that the person intended death either as a result of their actions, or that it was intended to cause death.
Police say Law shipped 160 packages from his websites within Canada, but as many as 1,200 to 40 countries. There are investigations underway in BC, Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Quebec, and around the world. In the U.S., the FBI probing the death of Benji Cohn, according to his brother, Gerald. He welcomes the new charges against Law.
I would love for Kenneth Law to be punished here in the U.S. as well, but he's got his hands full with all these other countries. So, I mean, it almost seems like a get in line type thing.
In the UK, where Tom Parfitt died by suicide, allegedly after ingesting chemicals purchased from Law, his father hopes these new charges thwart others.
Kenneth Law isn't the only person out there providing suicide kits. And I hope it sends a loud message to those people that they will be prosecuted.
Law is still a long way from a trial. By the time he's had his day in court in Ontario, he may be facing many more in other jurisdictions. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
The federal government is planning to revive a post-war initiative to ramp up housing construction across the country. The objective is to accelerate the building process for developers. Kate McKenna has more.
Homes like this were built across Canada for World War II veterans, a response to the biggest housing crunch the country's ever seen. Now the federal government wants to do it again.
We are living in a housing crisis, but it's not the first time Canada's been here. We are going to be moving forward with a catalog of pre-approved designs.
1950s catalogs like this one offered prefabricated options for builders, bungalows and multi-story homes, all ready to be built fast.
For a fee of $10, you could actually have access to designs that could be built quickly. In many instances, these homes were being built in a period of about 36 hours.
The federal government is launching consultations next month to make a more modern catalog. Experts say this could shave a full year off of build times.
I was pleasantly surprised and very excited. This is something that I'd been talking about for a while.
This all comes as millions of Canadians are priced out of the market and struggling to pay rent, putting political pressure on the governing Liberals.
While Canadians can't afford their rent or even dream of buying a home, now they worry they won't be able to feed their families at all.
The right kind of.
But experts say it's a complicated problem with no one solution.
It's not any kind of silver bullet to this, right? We're not just snapping our fingers and saying like, oh, look at that, we've solved everything. It's a helpful contribution, but there's some other things that have to go along.
Obviously, there's a lot of hard work still left to do to make sure that we get the implementation right, but today is a fantastic day.
Housing Minister Sean Fraser says the new catalog will include different types of builds, including multiplexes, student housing, and seniors' residences. He calls it a modern solution to the housing problem. As for when it will be ready, he says they're aiming for the end of next year. Kate McKenna, CBC News, Ottawa.
A CBC News investigation has found Canadian companies are joining the list of brands pulling their advertising from X, formerly known as Twitter. Bell and Angus Reid are now among the companies backing away from X amid a rise in hateful content and owner Elon Musk's apparent tolerance for anti-Semitic and extremist content. A review of about 24 accounts linked to white nationalists, misogynists, and other extremists found ads by major brands such as Samsung Canada, CF Montreal, formerly the Montreal Impact, as well as Pathways Alliance, an oil industry lobby group. So far, none of these companies has responded to emails from CBC requesting comment. The social media platform has been subject to serious backlash and has been in turmoil since Musk took control a year ago. Coming up, microplastics. They're ending up in the oceans. And now new research shows hurricanes pick these plastics out of the ocean and spread them inland. How that could harm your health after the break. Research by Canadian university students is raising concerns about major storms and microplastics. Hurricanes appear to be lifting the plastics out of the oceans and spreading them over pristine regions. As CBC's Kayla Hounsell explains, people are then at risk of breathing them in, even without knowing it.
As Hurricane Larry was lashing Newfoundland in September 2021, a couple of Dalhousie University students were out collecting air. Yes, just air.
An astonishing result that we weren't really expecting.
Anna Ryan says the ocean is often thought to be the ultimate sink for microplastics. We assume they stay there. But the students set out a large glass cylinder before, during, and after the hurricane, trying to determine whether storms might be whipping up those plastics, allowing them to travel through the air to rural communities, where there is likely no other source of microplastics.
We found there were a lot of plastics, way higher than any other study has ever found before.
It's so small. How small is it?
So if you think of the width of a human hair, it's about 20 to 30 times smaller than that. Because they're so small, they're really easily ingested or inhaled.
Ryan's work has now been published in Nature, a leading science journal.
It's a really big deal. I think that really just signals the importance of the work, the novelty of the work.
Here's our experimental setup.
Another Dalhousie student is conducting similar research on post-tropical storm Fiona last year. She says she'll be able to compare to Ryan's data when the results are in.
We can't make bigger actions like policy changes nationally to cut back on plastic pollution if we don't know how bad it is at a smaller level.
Ryan says her research shows microplastics are pretty much everywhere.
And that's why everyone should care about this problem. It's not just people who live in cities or people who live in areas that are very obviously polluted.
She says the solution is limiting the use of plastics to keep them from entering the environment in the first place. Kayla Hounsell, CBC News, Halifax.
Weather Update is brought to you by the art and beauty of the National Ballet of Ukraine. January 29th at the Burton Cummings Theatre. Tickets at nationalballetukraine.com.
Meteorologist John Sauter joins us now to talk more about flurries.
Yeah, flurries just running south of us right now, areas like Morris and over into Steinbach. Here's a look at the latest radar, and this is a band that's moving from the northwest down to the southeast. Provide a little bit of snow for areas just south of the city and down into southeastern Manitoba. Not a lot here, maybe a trace to a centimeter is all I'm expecting, but this gray area and white area you see here is where the snow is, and that's a 3-hour loop ending just a short time ago. All right, looking at temperatures now, -9 at the airport. Over at the Forks, it's -8, -10 in the Selkirk area. A little bit warmer up around Eli and Lake Manitoba at -7, and there are the temperatures in the west. To the north, you'd expect it to be colder, but wow, is it ever? And a lot of these changes, a lot of these temperatures will change in the other direction tonight. Flin Flon, The Pas, Lynn Lake, Thompson, all seeing rising temperatures as we head into the overnight period. So yeah, a warm up is on the way and it hits the north first. Let's look at these conditions for northwestern Ontario for tonight. We do have a few evening flurries around Red Lake. Fort Francis could see a few flakes, same with Kenora. Temperatures right around the seasonal normal, a little bit milder than that in Kenora. Here's a look at the southeast, and we do have evening flurries for Emerson, Steinbach, Sprague. Those are the ones I just showed you. Down to -12 in Winnipeg with a partly cloudy to clear sky. And then we've got evening clearing out to the west and through Portage, but some evening flurries around Morden and Winkler. Up to the north, it's a rising temperature, as mentioned, through the western areas. It'll be a bit windy in Lynn Lake with some flurries. Temps rising through Thompson, Norway House. So these are the lows by about midnight and then about 10 degrees warmer by tomorrow morning. And light snow by morning in the Churchill area. Look at the temperatures tomorrow. A big difference here. About 20 degrees difference in Thompson than where you're sitting right now. But a -4 in the afternoon, +2 in the Pas. To the south, we're looking at temps that are rising. In the west, we've got windy conditions around Dauphin, a high of 4 degrees, 2 for Brandon, 3 in Portage, and 2 degrees in Morden and Winkler. And then here in the southeast, we're warming up as well, -1s and -2s with a generally mainly sunny afternoon, and a -3 with a sun-cloud mix in Kenora. Fort Francis tomorrow at -1.
Thanks, John.
You bet.
And now, the latest in our special series produced by a team of aspiring filmmakers from right here in Winnipeg. They're all high school grads taking part in CREATE, an entertainment arts training program at Sisler High School. With the help of CBC Manitoba, they're producing stories about their community. Today's story is about a Winnipeg high school educator who juggles his love of teaching with his passion for dancing.
Sometimes as a teacher, we can't always be our authentic selves. But one thing I feel when I'm dancing is I get to show the world who Rolly really is. My name is Rolly Layson. I'm a grade 9 science and math teacher, and my hobby, dance. I got into teaching both math and science when I realized that becoming a doctor wasn't for me. How was your weekend out of 10? But I didn't want to lose all the science and math that I was studying, and I realized I've always done teaching, and that was the way I could connect my science and my math to something that I love doing, which is helping people through teaching. I started dancing when I was 4, and growing up, being Filipino, it's been part of my exposure. Whenever there's a party, an event, my aunts, my parents would always bring me to different parties. What I love about dance is how it allows me to explore different feelings, different characters, to express how I feel, the creativity that I have. The types of dances that I do are hip-hop, soul dances from the 70s, salsa, bachata, kizomba, hustle and locking, and right now, house. One of my goals, if I could, would be to have my own studio, a space where I can bring people together, and a place where people can really explore who they are and meet other people. Pretty well. Just had a dance class at lunch. Teaching it's really what pays the bills, but at the same time, it's dance that really keeps me sane. It's sort of like my dance therapy. So the conflict is, finding time to do your job, but also finding time to not only feed your pocket, but find ways to really feed your soul. See that? Oh, that's too big. Okay, come on. And I think when I look at my goals as a teacher, it's how do I create a structure, but also how do I freestyle within the structure. And I think house helps me achieve that goal of one day hopefully having a studio that allows people to be themselves within a structure, but also explore. I definitely was able to combine the two. In fact, I'm now teaching the dance program here. Try and get to your body. Again, we only have less than 30 minutes.
Having Mr. Layson as a teacher is really fun. He's a very authentic person. He's really well-rounded, and he always has stories to tell.
He can do both things really well, like academics and dance. So if I would have a question about math, I can go to him. If I have a question about how to do a certain move, I can go to him. He can really guide me in different situations. So I think he's a great teacher.
So for me, dance and teaching has definitely combined, and it's putting me closer to make my goal of being a dance teacher within this community more and more of a reality. My message has to be, try to understand the language of your passion. Because I think when you do, you really learn to feed your soul, you really learn how to love yourself, and you can allow to be yourself as authentically as possible.
What a great guy. That was Maples Collegiate teacher Rolly Layson with students Charles Sandhu and Ishwin Rana. The story was produced by students enrolled in Sisler's CREATE program. Cyril Zamora, Lori Marie Karaning, Jazzy Galachera, and Kyra Plega. Basketball Manitoba says more and more players are signing up to play the sport. We'll hear what's driving a spike in registration and how the organization hopes to keep that momentum growing after the break. CBC Winnipeg News will be right back. Maybe it's because we now have the Winnipeg Sea Bears playing downtown, or because of Team Canada's performance at the FIBA Basketball World Cup in September. Whatever the reason, Basketball Manitoba says registration to play basketball this year jumped by 23%. CBC's Emily Brass spoke with Executive Director Adam Wedlake on Information Radio this morning.
It was surprising, to be honest. We would usually see 5% in a good year, and obviously the last couple of years, a few years ago with the pandemic, the numbers were flatlined and even declining, of course, with everything we went through. But yeah, it was amazing to see real numbers come into fruition over the last month or so once we sort of see our final registration numbers through the fall settle in. So yeah, it was an amazing number to see where we're at right now.
And so which age group saw the biggest growth?
Really across the board. Like we run programming basically starting around age 5, even 4-year-olds sometimes, and right up through adult, sort of the recreation play, different leagues and so on, right through as old as you can kind of play. We still see players up until their 60s still playing in some capacity, and so it was really pretty even across the board. Actually, that was our biggest spike, was specifically adult basketball, and that's that age 18 plus, and quite a while. We got 40 plus years ahead of you there if you can still make it to 65 still on the court kind of range. So yeah, it was pleasant to see it was not just one specific category.
So much fun, especially for the older players. What do you think helped drove up the numbers?
Well, like you said in your intro there, this Winnipeg Sea Bears presence, I think, it would carry the biggest lone reason. They started up last spring, and that was a 25-year gap from the last time there was a pro basketball presence here in the province, and so to see that come to fruition, because that's one thing to see fans and support and people in the crowds and supporting. That was amazing and awesome. Love to see it, but sometimes you don't know if that will actually translate into new participation, and that includes like players, coaches, officials, volunteers, and that's where we're seeing this really come into its own over just in the last 6 months, really, of their presence.
And then how about the national team? Do you think that played a role too?
That's a big part. It was perfect timing because it was right in the midst of when we were getting going for the fall. It was late summer, early fall. And the fact that the men's national team finished third in the world, which has never happened before, shone the spotlight on our sport a little heavier than it would have been. And then the team that they now qualified for the Paris Olympics this coming summer, which is even a bigger stage and spotlight that'll draw. And again, that's the first time that team has reached that level since the 2000 Olympics in Sydney. So that's another generation that's seen a bit of stagnation. So we're really seeing sort of a double storm here, of the perfect storm of excitement around our sport, and obviously the numbers show that.
And then you also saw more new female players in a pretty male-dominated sport at this point, when you think of the NBA. How do you plan to keep encouraging women to play?
Well, that is one of our challenges for sure. The other one being continuing to grow the game outside of the larger centers of Winnipeg and the more rural, especially northern areas of Manitoba. But yeah, on the female side, we typically, if we were to open the doors and say, all right, let's everybody come one, come all, typically out of 10 people showing up, 7 would be male, 3 would be female. So that's a challenge for sure. We want to, of course, get that parity as close as we can to 50-50. But we did see, just because of the two examples I've given, the Sea Bears and the Olympic team are both male teams. That was definitely not exclusive to just male growth. So we've seen actually a bit more parity of a 60-40 split of the new growth, which was good to see, great to see. And but to keep them going and active, that's the challenge, and not just on the female side, but on the male side. It's like a store. Sometimes it's maybe easier to get the customer in the first time, but how do you get them back the second time and keep them coming back? And that's our challenge, of course, is to give people the positive experience that they're looking for, and they'll come back.
Emily Brass speaking with Adam Westlake of Basketball Manitoba. John Sauter's back with your 7-day forecast, and we'll have your daily lift in just a moment.
We do have a few flurries south of the city, rolling through the southern Red River Valley tonight, but by tomorrow morning, nice and clear. A couple of sunny days ahead, warm days as well. -1 tomorrow, 3 on Thursday, and still above 0 on Friday. We're still above seasonal on the weekend, -1 Saturday and -4 on Sunday. Now, this could be a good night to get out and enjoy some Christmas lights around the city.
They're so pretty. You know, tonight's featured house is in Transcona. It isn't just Christmas themed. This one celebrates Whoville. Here's your daily lift.
Hi, I'm Jason Howard, and my address is 1137 Devonshire Drive West. I love Christmas. My family loves Christmas. My wife does all the planning of it, and we both put it together, and we just add every year. So it's just all about loving the Christmas season. Usually it's a process about 2 to 3 days for about 3 to 4 hours. People come by now, we see people stopping with their kids, taking photos, going ooh, ah, seeing it, cars driving, parking, and just taking a nice little look at the house. We try to add at least one piece a year because a lot of this is actually handmade by my wife. Come on down to 1137 Devonshire Drive West and enjoy the show of Christmas, because Christmas is the best time. Everyone loves Christmas.
Ah, that's a great display.
Yeah, great spirit.
Love the Grinch. We're celebrating a significant date in your career.
Yeah, you know what? It was 39 years ago when I had a commercial pilot license with only about 200 hours, and I got a job in broadcasting. So that was in 1984. 39 years. I was 23 years old, so do the math. Now,
little baby Johnny with a mullet.
I must tell you that recently I've come to a pretty big decision, a hard decision, because the people I work with and the people I work for are fantastic here at CBC. I've really enjoyed my job, but I am retiring. I made this announcement back in October, so about 6 weeks ago, to Facebook people, and thank you for all your kind comments, but not everybody who watches us every night is on Facebook, so you may not know, but yes, I'm retiring. Not right away. January 5th is my last day here at CBC, so I'll have a little break over Christmas, and then I'll come back for 4 days with Janet, and January 5th.
And I don't know if you've ever seen me cry on television, but there's a slight possibility of tearing up, just because, you know.
You might not be alone that night, but I will have a lot more to say that night for sure.
Yeah, I think you should wait till 40 years of broadcasting, don't you? Have a great evening, and we'll see you tonight at 11.
Yeah.